like to call upon a very eminent speaker who is known, if at all we say that ever since the formation of Telangana, many would have known that many investments have come to Telangana, and it has got feedback, it got an image that Telangana is proactive, be it in industry, various industry-friendly initiatives, policies, now of course education. If there is one man, an officer, who put the state's progress on fast track, especially in regards to the growth of industry, investments, and the job opportunities in the state of Telangana, is none other than a special officer who has been on the forefront in taking the state on the path of progress. Please join me in welcoming a senior bureaucrat, Sri Jayesh Ranjan, Principal Secretary, Industries and Commerce and Information Technology. He has also held the position of Vice Chancellor before of Jawaharlal Nehru Technology University and many key positions in regards to employment, entrepreneurship. Thank you very much, sir. The next speaker is a man who has played a very key role. In last 3.5 years, many would agree with me, there has been a dramatic transformation in higher education system, be it modernization, reorganization of courses, or many other things. Now it has made its mark in the country. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Sri Naveen Mittal, Commissioner, Collegiate Education and Technical Education, Government of Telangana. And to do the honors, this power-packed speakers, we have a young lady who has been on, right from the scratch, she has been there giving wings to the ideas of entrepreneurship and business of women in Telangana. She has been there right from the designing of VHub, the facility which is there in Hyderabad, and they're not just in Hyderabad but across the Telangana now, also collaboration with other states. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Deepthi Raula, CEO VHub. So now I would request, we have the decision makers, many might have answers, questions, so it's Deepthi Raula's role to bring out those answers to those questions. It's like directly from the horse's mouth. Now I would request, over to you, Deepthi.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, sir. It's a pleasure and honor speaking with both Jay sir and Naveen sir, both pioneers in taking so many wonderful initiatives which is promoting investment in the state, as well as in the morning when I was hearing Mittal sir speak, there was so much transformation that was happening. So we'll just start with the conversation. So the format is going to be that I'll be asking about 3 to 4 questions, but then I would like to really request the audience also to speak, sir, because I may not be asking the right questions also. So I'll just start with about 3 questions for you, sir. To start out with, Sir Jayesh sir, I'll start out with you, sir. Sir, one of the big things that you've been leading since the formation of the state is that you've been a part of many investment promotions. You have been an advisor on many college boards. You have been a VC as well. And also a lot of support, a strong supporter for many international, national and local organizations. So one of the biggest things that we want to understand, sir, for the benefit of the faculty, is that who is making the biggest impact in the field of IT? Number one, sir. Second thing, is it government, private or educational institutions? The second question, sir, as a follow-up, is that what are the emerging trends that you're actually seeing to promote in the fields of innovation and entrepreneurship, sir. And the last and important question is that what is the best resource by which people and students can actually understand these emerging trends, sir?
Okay. So, no. So, do you want me to answer all three in one
This
go?
is one question, sir.
These are all one questions only.
Yes. Because I only have 4 questions to ask, so I'm just juxtaposing everything.
But will you ask him also 3 questions? Or his questions are more?
I'm going to ask sir about the NEP, so I think that is going to be a big question in itself.
Okay, all right. No. So, see, I'll answer, of course, those 3 questions, but I want to answer something more than that also. I'll put a 4th question to myself and answer. But first of all, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be a part of this discussion with Mr. Naveen Mittal, my esteemed colleague, whose contribution to the education sector has been really stellar in the last 5 years or so. So, I will give an industry's perspective also to what exactly do the industries require, what is happening, what needs to be improved. See, one of the reasons why Telangana and Hyderabad in particular have become an important destination for investments, both global investments, domestic investments, is a sense that you get good quality resources here. The talent pool that is available is good. 5 years, 6 years ago, I remember, particularly in the IT sector, companies had mixed opinion. They would still recruit in Telangana, but their feeling was that skill sets are not enough, and therefore we have to spend months altogether in retraining them, reorienting them, etc. But that has changed significantly. Now, in fact, there are some companies who feel so confident that they can straight away deploy students of Telangana's colleges into live projects literally from day one. So between 6 years ago, 7 years ago and today, things have changed quite a lot. But at the same time, it is a fact that there are multiple innovations, multiple updates in the technologies that are getting deployed, and the ability to keep pace with all that is going to be one big challenge and also one big responsibility. If Telangana has to remain in the forefront of giving that quality assurance, that good quality manpower, skilled manpower is going to be made available to you. So at any level, whether you are a large university, you are a private university, or you are a small college in some remote area, there should be a feedback mechanism through which industry's requirements, industry's interests continuously go back to the institutions. And we also need to give opportunity to the institutions to be agile and flexible. See, many years ago, many years ago, I used to work in, at that time it was combined Andhra Pradesh. I used to work in Chittoor district. And in Chittoor district in Tirupati, as some of you would know, there are 2 universities, the Venkateshwar University and Padmavati University. So in both the universities, because I was working in Chittoor district for a long time, and I used to connect with the academics quite a lot, I was inducted in the board of studies of the management program in one of the universities. And after becoming a member in the board of studies, I found how complicated the process was. The BOS has to have multiple sittings on some very, very basic kind of syllabus change, or whether this book has to be taught instead of that book. And then BOS was not the final authority. The BOS's recommendations went somewhere else and finally to the EC. So the process is very, very complicated. So can we reform this and bring more flexibility into it? That is one thing. Then there is another responsibility on the industries also. See, when they say that I am not getting good enough resources in Telangana, for instance, are they doing anything to invest in improving the quality of the resources? And I see Professor Venkatramana in the audience. We have been trying through the Higher Education Council since a long time to institutionalize the process of internship. I mean, unless you encourage students to understand what goes on in the industry, and so that they become more aware about what courses they should take, what studies they should carry out, they will not really be in a position to, there will be no self-motivation to really go up the ladder. So how do you do that? another thing which I've been speaking about quite a lot is encouraging the industry to also conduct programs for faculty. See, eventually it is the responsibility of the faculty to transact various content to their students. And if the faculty also understand what exactly goes on in an industry, what technologies do they deploy, what are the other skill sets that they are looking for, they will somehow be able to manage. Even if the syllabus is tight, there is not much of a flexibility, everything is very tightly defined. Innovative faculty, smart faculty will still find a way of teaching new things, topical things, relevant things. At least in engineering colleges, you also do a college project. At least some of the things, some of the new concept can be introduced through that window of getting those projects done, etc. And an equal amount of responsibility lies on the management also in how do they motivate and incentivize the faculty who does these kind of things. So as was pointed out, I was the in-charge Vice Chancellor of, officiating Vice Chancellor of JNTU for some period of time. And this used to really bother me because when we talk about colleges, they are not of the same standard. They are brilliant colleges, some of the best of the country within the JNTU system. But at the same time, there are some colleges who are just not able to match up to even the basic minimum quality standards. So how do you ensure that there is enough motivation, incentives for those colleges to also improve, to offer at least a basic minimum quality, etc., etc. So from an industry perspective, there are both demands or asks from the education system, but there are also responsibilities upon them. So it's a, so when you ask the question, who plays an important role? I mean, both have equal amount of responsibility and accountability. And unless they harmonize their interests and activities, we will not really be able to go very far. But I'm very happy that the kind of reforms which the college education, the technical education has promoted under the stewardship of Mr. Naveen Mittal, all that is very encouraging. And if the momentum is picked up by all the other stakeholders also, this can become a role model state in offering the best quality resources to the industry.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Naveen sir, I only have one question for you, which has a lot of offshoots, I believe. Sir, one of the things that is a key topic of discussion across the board is NEP 2021, sir. And under that, there have already been some wonderful steps that have already been taken. So if you can just brief us a little bit on what are the 3 key steps that the department has undertaken. Number 2, sir, also, we also have seen that there's a lot of entrepreneurship development initiatives that are being taken under your leadership. Can you also explain a little bit on the kind of numbers that have been already achieved?
Okay. Thank you, Deepti, and very good evening to all the participants. NEP, which has come last year, and it's been more than a year now, NEP is in implementation. This policy has come after almost a period of 34 years. The last NEP, the education policy, national education policy, was in 1986. So it took almost 34 years for us as a country to get this NEP. And it is being universally acknowledged by analysts that NEP 2020 will do to education sector what 91 liberalization did to the industrial sector. So it's that big a game changer. It can be a real transformation in the education sector, what India as a country has seen 30 years back in terms of industrial liberalization. And we are already seeing elements of that coming together. So since you asked about 3 things, and the policy has number of things. If you ask me what are those 3 things which are very important, I would say the first one is that NEP has brought in a lot of flexibility into the education system. So we are talking about now multiple entries and multiple exits. That is, and we talked about it in the morning also, after 1 year, a student can exit with a certificate in that particular subject. After 2 years, a student can exit with a diploma. 3 years with a basic degree, and 4 years with a professional degree or an honors degree. So that is the kind of flexibility which NEP is talking about. And we are already in the process of implementing because, in fact, Osmania University, which is our biggest university here, we have had a detailed roadmap on how to take it forward. And we expect that this would come into implementation by the end of this academic year, so that, because there are a lot of modalities to be worked out. Our present structure is based on a natural progression. You know, if you look at engineering education, you do basic sciences. Still, in most of the engineering programs, computers has to great extent come out of it, but most of the other branches, you still do basic sciences in the first year, and some basic foundational courses in the second year, and then so on. So in case one is exiting out, what is the outcome of that 1 year of education, which is going to be useful for this candidate to go out and then offer himself in the market, is a question which now we are asking, because this is a fundamental change. And that is the work which is now going on in the universities to redesign our system according to the new realities which NEP has brought about. So that is one. Two, NEP now talks about multidisciplinary education system. And our country, if you see some of the oldest universities, let's say Osmania University or Kakatiya University, have always been multidisciplinary. But then there was a phase when we went into a phase of specialized education. You know, we started having standalone engineering colleges, standalone medical colleges, standalone law colleges. But out of this experience now, we are again talking of going back to the multidisciplinary education, because we find that we have created these silos. Each of these colleges are now working in silos. For example, let's say a medical device has to be prepared, has to be kind of, let's say, built. An engineering college which does not have access to a medical college or a medical facility, how is it that they're going to get the right inputs and the right feedback as to whether this is being done properly or not? And when people across spectrums don't talk to each other, you don't get the kind of innovation which is possible when people talk to each other. In fact, you mentioned in the morning in your talk also the same thing. So that is the second thing which NEP is wanting to change. Make institutions more multidisciplinary in nature. And I think we as a state also are ready for that. In fact, we've got some excellent, as Sir has said, some really national level colleges today who are ready to transform themselves either into universities or multidisciplinary institutions. We already have seen few of them becoming private universities in last couple of years, and there are few who are in the pipeline. And this is a process which I think will be greatly accelerated. And third, if you ask about the most important thing, is the new regulatory structure which is coming up. We have had the regulatory entities which have again been very segmented. We had this UGC, which was a grants commission becoming a regulatory entity. We have this AICT, which manages technical education. We have Council of Architecture. We used to have MCI, now it has become NMC. We have Pharmacy Council of India. We have Bar Council of India. Number of entities, some of them whose regulation work on cross purposes. I mean, I can give you example of architecture. So the Council of Architecture and AICT always fight for the freedom for the architecture education. And many times their regulations are on cross purposes with each other. And I think this is now up for overhaul, wherein Higher Education Commission of India is going to come up, which will have 4 verticals. And those verticals are, one is the regulatory vertical. The second one is the grants vertical, that how do you then provide on what basis grants to various entities. The third one is the accreditation vertical, which is going to work on policies and issues pertaining to accreditation. And the fourth one is about the professional quality as to how do you improve the quality of education in the institution. So these are the verticals which are being talked about, and I think we are all waiting for that structure to come. And that will be again a big game changer, because the policy talks about light but tight regulation. In the sense, we need to come out of these very, very micro detailed regulations which are there presently in terms of even the square feet of the classroom or the lab, which should be there. And our institutions have to suffer sometimes this measurement of the classroom size with a measuring tape. So we are likely to come out of this with the new structure which is going to come up. And I think there are multiple other things, due to paucity of time I would talk about it, but we are all very bullish about the impact of NEP, and we are looking forward to the implementation and the success of NEP.
Thank you, sir. Sir, that actually segues. I have that question that I'm going to ask you again. I think that's question number 3 for you. So, Jay sir, that actually segues quite beautifully. One of the things that Naveen sir had actually mentioned is how do we make different disciplines talk to each other? And this is a question that we wanted to ask you also, sir. Sir, Telangana today has more than 3,000 wonderful startups. We have a very vibrant startup ecosystem. And recently at a webinar that was organized by the FICCI State Council, along with the Telangana State Council of Higher Education, they have concluded to brand Telangana as a global education destination. However, when we ask the startups, many startups that we have interacted together, sir, when we asked them to set up something in Hyderabad, they always said that they could not find the right kind of startup engineers. So, sir, how do we bridge the gap between being the global hub for education and becoming a global hub for startups? How do we bridge that gap to enable more and more wonderful growing startups to actually set up in Hyderabad?
See, Deepti, there is something which I would like to add to the previous point, and then I'll address this. See, Naveen, I'm glad that you are so optimistic about NEP, but I also keep thinking about it on how the NEP, the other kind of reforms that you have instituted are going to benefit, let us say, like Mahatma Gandhi used to say, think of the last person standing in the queue. So how do these things benefit the last student in, let us say, some remote institution which is not very well endowed, the quality of faculty is average, students don't have self-motivation. And yesterday I see Professor Mahendra Reddy Garu in the audience. Yesterday I was at his university. I was delivering a lecture there, and I mentioned about a particular episode, and I'll very briefly touch upon it. It just happened 5-6 days ago. I saw it in a tweet which our minister had tweeted. There is a district in Gujarat called Banaskantha, and it has the district headquarters is called Palanpur. So apparently they have some position which is called Gram Raksha Dal. By the name of it, it looks like some temporary kind of, it's a community kind of thing, the community police, etc. So they had advertised for 600 posts of this Gram Raksha Dal, and 10,000 people turned up for those 600 posts. And obviously there was a stampede, there was a lathi charge, and so on and so forth. And Mr. Sir had tweeted it, of course, in a political context, that the national government keeps claiming that they have created millions of jobs, but where are these jobs when these kind of things are happening? So obviously, the people who are applying for that Gram Raksha Dal position, they are not from, let us say, the IITs or triple ITs or the colleges like Vigyan Jyoti and ICFAI University, etc., which they represent. They'll obviously be from some kind of a remote college, rural college. So what needs to be done more? I mean, NEP might be having some answers, but how do you make those solutions realistic, implementable? I mean, if IITs are here and NEP helps them go from here till there, which is also great. I mean, there could be more Parag Agarwals and all that, but eventually Parag Agarwals will take care of themselves. What about the last mile student rather? I mean, the last student in the queue. So I really wonder whether we are offering solutions for them. And it also links to Deepti's question. See, we are also, for example, I see the TASK CEO sitting here. When we created world-class innovation institutions like T-Hub, P-Hub, T-Works, etc. In the initial years, we noticed there aren't too many takers from Telangana. Mostly it's, folks from other states who are coming, which is all right. I mean, we are not parochial in any way. Our doors are open to everyone. But the minister also felt that we should also create a pipeline from our own colleges, our own institutions. So TASK runs some program. Deepti runs a program called V Alpha, isn't it? In which you train colleges to become institutions which also promote innovation and entrepreneurship. So a day will certainly come. We may not be there today, when there will be more and more startups from our homegrown ecosystem. And finding talent for them also will become a bottleneck, because the best students of IITs, triple ITs, Vigyan Jyoti, ICFAI, etc. will most likely move to America. Yesterday in that lecture I was jokingly telling them, and I'm sure many of us would have seen this, there is a meme which came out after Parag Agrawal was appointed as the CEO, that Padhega India, tabhi to badhega America. So if Indians do well, it eventually will benefit America rather than benefiting ourselves. So these are some of the thoughts which still bother me. I mean, NEP has great intentions, wonderfully drafted, chapters and all that. But will there be a gap in implementation, particularly addressing the needs of the last college in the remotest village and the last student in that village?
But sir, how do we find the talent for the startups which are already... No, sir, this is Jay, sir, your question.
No, so I'm also kind of as puzzled as anyone else. See, so the one possibility is, and again, I participated in a session a couple of months ago. That has really given me lots of positive ideas. And if Naveen and his colleagues can implement it in our state, it is still at a consultation stage at the national level. But obviously in our country, states have lots of autonomy. We can decide to do it. So Government of India, I think it is the Skill Development Ministry. They had constituted a task force. It's called the Sunita Sanghi Task Force. They had studied, or they had actually considered creating a national framework for career guidance and counseling. So everyone need not come to higher education. Everyone need not come to a college. I mean, today we run colleges where hundreds of students study with inadequate facilities, average quality of faculty, with no clarity on the students, that after they complete the course, what will happen to them. They just kind of pass time. And then later on they appear in the Gram Raksha Dal kind of exams, and there is a stampede and police lathi charge them. So if we prevent those many students from getting into higher education, guide them in other streams, maybe even encourage them to become entrepreneurs. See, today we have hundreds of cases of entrepreneurs coming from very, very humble backgrounds also. So it's not that you require an IIT degree to become a successful entrepreneur. But why don't we take this decision at the right time? So the Sunita Sanghi task force actually went into it. It suggested that immediately after completing, let us say, 10th or intermediate or undergraduation, this career guidance assessment is done by qualified agencies and paneled agencies using technology. Those who do not have any aptitude for higher education, we pull them out. We don't kind of even admit them. And yesterday again in the same session, someone asked me that how do you visualize education in 2030? And I gave this answer that there will be very few institutions left. There will be some kind of a Darwinism. Only a few institutions will left which will cater to highly motivated, self-motivated, talented people, and others will be accommodated in other streams like vocational education, entrepreneurship, polytechnics, and so on and so forth.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I know you touched upon it this morning, but I'll ask you anyway for everybody else. Sir, you're actually a big promoter for automation and digitization of all the administrative processes, and you believe hugely in digital transformation. And this morning you did touch upon how digital education is not the way to go. But what do you think are the pros and cons, sir, of digital education. And one of the things that we also need to kind of, if we can get your insights into it, what is it that the students of today need to understand about having the entire knowledge of the world at their fingertips and actually executing on something? How do colleges become the lighthouses for that?
So one small correction. I mean, I didn't say that digital education is not the way to go, but what I said is the future is blended hybrid. That is going to be both or an ideal combination of physical as well as digital education. Only physical education is not helping us move forward in the way we want, and only digital education will again not be a solution. So it has to be a kind of rich blend of the two is what the right model is. And the reason for that also I explained in the morning, in the sense that physical classroom has still got lot of advantages in terms of the rich interaction which takes place, two-way interaction which takes place between the teacher and the student, and also the peer-to-peer learning which takes place. And digital media has a big advantage in the sense that it is very personalized system of education. A classroom environment is designed for an average student. No teacher, more often than not, if you see, the teacher would be going at the pace of an average student. So both a slow learner is frustrated in the class because he or she cannot keep pace with the pace of the teacher, and a fast learner is also frustrated because he finds it too boring, something which he or she already knows. So if you add the digital mode to it, and the information content can be provided in a personalized way at the pace of the student, anywhere, anytime, that would save a lot of time and energy, number one. Number two, it will be at the speed and at the liking of the student. And then the classroom environment can be a more environment for learning which takes place. So that is the direction into which we are heading. Now, how do our education institutions change with the time? And you asked about the administrative tools which are needed. And I can tell you that in Telangana we have been right at the forefront of integrating ICT tools into administration as well as teaching. For example, our entire admissions are completely online. You've heard of those. Most of our faculty members and the institutions here deal with it. The Degree Online Services Telangana. It's a very, very seamless process through which nearly about 2 lakh plus students take admission into more than 1100 colleges all across the state. Completely online and seamless. It has done away with a lot of issues which were there in terms of student mobility. Think of a day when students had to physically go to every campus, buy the application form, fill up the application form, submit it, wait for that college to display its admission list. And you got admission into, let's say, 3 colleges. The college doesn't know which college this student is going to join. And you have second list, third list, fourth list. I mean, it's endless. And DOST has greatly done away with that. So that is completely, I would say, online, and many states have come to Telangana to emulate it. All our colleges now are on biometric attendance system. Actually, Kalyan spoke about biometrics. So in our state, all the higher education institutions are on biometric, wherein staff and student attendance is now being taken through the biometric. Our fundamental concept is that unless until student comes to the institution, what is it that you are going to work upon? And all talk of quality is meaningless until the student comes to the institution. If it's a non-attendee student, I mean, absolutely we are talking about quality in the air. All our institutions, our government colleges now are on e-office as well as college administration information management system, wherein our communication between the commissionerate and the colleges is completely through digitally signed communication through online. And I can tell you that even during lockdown, we were functioning totally normally, even when our people were working from home. In fact, in our commissionerate, entire pendency came down during the first phase of lockdown. The reason was that we moved from an attendance-based office to an outcome-based office, because we said that if you are working from home, you will be treated as present if you work on at least 2 files in a day. 1 file means half a day, 2 files means a day. And this simple thing completely made our pendency completely zero. I mean, at the end of the lockdown, we were up to date. And there are, during the lockdown, I can tell you that all our faculty members took online classes, and they are now proficient in almost all the online tools, whether it is video conferencing like Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams, or even making their own videos. There are teachers whose video lessons on YouTube's have crossed 5 lakh kind of a mark, and that is the kind of impact which has happened. And I must compliment our faculty members, both in government colleges as well as in private institutions also, for really moving it. Though it was a difficult time, I mean, access is a big issue. Kalyan spoke about it, and the speaker before that spoke about it. Access is a very big issue which has been an issue online, because lack of device or lack of connectivity for many students. But I think as a state, as a country, we are now moving in the right direction, and I am somehow very, very optimistic of future.
Thank you, sir. It's always good to hear things. So, Jay, sir, coming down to this important question, this is something you've actually discussed with us also. Sir, there is a lot of focus and emphasis on student entrepreneurship, sir. Sir, we have the entire Telangana innovation ecosystem. As you know, we are all working towards enabling more students to be entrepreneurs. And e-cells and incubation cells in colleges are also doing the same thing. But there is a gap somewhere. Sir, with your guidance, can we get some practical advice from you, which can be taken both by us in the innovation ecosystem and also by academia, on what is it that we are actually missing out in making more students entrepreneurial in nature, sir? Because what's happening today is that there's an entrepreneur cell in every college, but we see that it's the same innovation that is happening across all colleges. It is the same idea. Sir, if we can get 3 practical ideas from you or suggestions, that'll be great.
Sure, thank you. So, very good point raised by Deepti, that if we are not able to provide jobs to every student who gets into a college, which is also practically not possible, what are the other opportunities that they have? And trends have shown last decade or maybe a little bit more that becoming an entrepreneur is an equally attractive option. In fact, we see the poster boys of the world of technology today, people like, let us say, Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or even Mark Zuckerberg. Each of them, all of you I'm sure will know this, each of them were admitted in the best universities in the US. Bill Gates was at Harvard, Zuckerberg was at Harvard, Steve Jobs was at Stanford, but all 3 of them dropped out. Not because they could not cope with the demands of Harvard or a Stanford, but because they were kind of very committed to the idea which was running in their minds. And they felt that going to class and taking exams and all will come in the way. So they chose to come out, and of course they created products we all know about. So there are many other stories in India as well of entrepreneurs starting very, very young from their college days itself. And this is how the trend is going to be. In fact, recently I was in, not recently, it was just before COVID, but you can call it recent because 2 years have just vanished like anything. I was in a startup event in Bangalore where I was introduced to someone who became the CEO of his company at 14 years of age. And this is a real company. It's not that he's the son of some rich person who created a fictitious company for him to play around. It's a real company with balance sheet, with employees, with activities. And at 14, he was the CEO. Of course, when I met him, he was older, but it all started when he was 14. And this is how the trend will be, that you will be, starting young, and by the time you leave college, your idea will be full blown and you will be straight away able to ground it. Now, what I notice again, I'm not kind of showing any disrespect to anyone, because there are lots of very senior faculty members, senior academicians. But my personal understanding is that entrepreneurship training has to be handled in a completely different way. See, entrepreneurship, suppose I want to teach entrepreneurship to my students. I cannot tell them that these are the 4 definitions of entrepreneurship. Someone in the US defined it like this, someone else defined it like that. It is not that I have to teach him what is the definition of entrepreneurship, or these are the 10 qualities of a successful entrepreneur. I mean, you cannot teach entrepreneurship the way you will teach chemistry, or you will teach, let us say, geography. It has to be much more experiential. That is one. The second thing is that who has that experience to provide that experiential understanding. So there could be great faculty. They may have good communication skills, good articulation skills, but if they have not tasted any form of entrepreneurship themselves or from very, very close quarters, they will just not be able to deliver. So that is the second point. And the third very important point is that students are extremely smart. I mean, typically we kind of undervalue their intelligence, thinking that they are good for nothing kind of people. They're like a herd of sheep or goat, and you drive them in this way or that way. But they're very smart to understand, is the faculty sincere, genuine, is what he's telling comes from his understanding, his knowledge, from his heart, or he has just memorized some 10 definitions from some book and is just repeating. And the moment they find that lack of genuineness, some element of kind of make-believe in that lessons or that classes, the student will completely switch off. And obviously, if he switches off, the opportunity to sow the seeds of entrepreneurship in him or her, that gets lost. And then the student gets into the regular rat race of creating or writing his exam, getting a degree, trying for a job, etc. So my personal feeling is that first find, if you have some faculty who have that spirit in him or her to convey the essence of entrepreneurship in a very experiential way. If you do not have, find someone who can come as a part-time faculty or an adjunct faculty or a guest faculty who has actually dabbled in entrepreneurship. And you don't have to look for some very successful person who has created $1 billion worth of business, etc. Even a village level entrepreneur who has done something worthwhile, who is able to at least share his experiences and knowledge, because entrepreneurship is a journey. And at different stages, what personal characteristics of yours helped you navigate that journey, that sharing, that training is much more important than teaching how is entrepreneurship defined and then putting an exam at the end and checking whether he got 35 marks or 40 marks. I mean, that is not how you are going to train new entrepreneurs. So that is my sense.
Thank you, sir. Last question for you, Naveen, sir. Sir, coming on to the other side, with all the amazing effort that has been put in by the department to enable more entrepreneurship cells in colleges, I think 150, right, sir, that have been established in colleges?
Yeah, I think about 130 colleges which we have.
Yes, sir.
We have set up entrepreneurship development cells in all of these
Sir,
colleges.
so again, respectfully I ask, a lot of times, as sir was pointing out, the faculty who is in charge of these kinds of EDCs is usually the most senior person or the newest person. So how are you actually enabling, as JS was pointing out, and it is something we also are going to be requesting from the innovation ecosystem, how are we enabling these e-cells to be more effective and not just one more credit for students?
So one of the things is that seniority is not a criteria for who is going to manage it. Most of the faculty is either from the commerce or from the business management side, who are basically heading these cells, and they are also selected on interest base. Those who are really genuinely interested in entrepreneurship as a mode of kind of helping the students to move forward in their lives. As we move forward on this, I fully agree with what Jay sir has said, that the whole methodology of working on supporting a student on entrepreneurship has to be totally different from what academics is all about. And I think this is exactly the spirit in which we want to move forward on this, and we're looking for also more and more learning from the stakeholders and the players in the sector to kind of support it, because it's a very new initiative which has been taken.
Thank Thank you so much, sir. And I think that actually sums up. So there is a lot of optimism and hope, not just with the NEP, but also with the direction that we are all taking forward, either in education as well as the innovation ecosystem. So, sir, do we have 2 minutes for questions? Do you have any questions from the audience, or can we take? Yeah.
If at all we want to take, it has to be less than 30 seconds. Any questions? Straight question. Yeah.
Kiran, can you? But it'll save some time.
Thanks, Zippy. Thank you, Mr. Naveen Mittal and Mr. Ranjan. I have a question that either of you can answer. I'm Dr. Kiran from VNR Vijnana Jyoti. I'm the convener for the Institute Innovation Council and also the manager of the incubation center there, VJ Hub. So in that context, I would want to ask, extending on what Mr. Jayesh Ranjan said and you also said. So we have this EDSL and the IIC and everything there, but there is also synergy, of course, at our institution. But at least in some cases, I'm saying that there is a disconnect even within the cells, within the college, and with the ecosystem as such. The ecosystem, of course, the team has already outlined that, and the ecosystem is trying to do that connect, but there is still some kind of gap that is coming by. And that gap is also with the education, like Mr. Yeshwanth sir said, about how entrepreneurship is taught and how innovation is celebrated on the campuses. Most campuses celebrate placements more than innovations. And to be very honest, with due respects to all the education academicians out there, I also see that there is kind of a disconnect as to how innovation must be celebrated on campuses, like placements.
So the answer to that is that innovation and entrepreneurship is a slow process. The impact or the result of it comes after a period of time, whereas placements is seen to be immediate. You know, it's like some of those coaching centers which advertise as to how many students of theirs have gone into IITs, or medical school. So placements is very similar, but innovation and entrepreneurship, the impact comes like after a few years. But I think I fully agree with you that we must celebrate it, and I see now more and more institutions actually talking about their faculty. For example, when Parag Agarwal became the CEO, I could see IIT Bombay celebrating in a big way. So, and we know the fact that he's from IIT Bombay. So, I'm sure that our institutions also are taking pride and will be taking pride in their successful innovations and entrepreneurs moving forward. And ultimately, we have to celebrate it, and that's the only way to go forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this wonderful fireside chat. So we had the powerful speakers here. A huge round of applause. Many would agree with me, it is because of certain officers that the state is on the forefront, be it education, industry or others. So these are the change makers who believe in their actions, and as a result we get to see the results, and we get to see the state of Telangana on the forefront. A huge round of applause for the Principal Secretary Jayesh Ranjan, Information Technology, Industries and Commerce, for joining us and giving us time and sharing his thoughts. At the same time, the transformational leader in education, Mr. Naveen Mittal, Commissioner, Collegiate Education and Technical Education Department. I would request Mr. Naveen Mittal, who's the program chair for India Global Education Festival, to please present a speaker memento as a token of appreciation to our special guest, the guest of honor memento to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. And also a sapling. A key speaker memento to Mr. Naveen Mittal. and also to Deepthi Raula for wonderfully moderating this session. She had many questions. Many more questions are there. This is how we came together, Deepthi Raula and I sat. We thought that this would be the right combination of getting the answers from horse's mouth. So we would be, I would request pose for a group picture, sir.